that declaration is the product of God's creative acts.
So I hear you really like to emphasize that nature of reality is from a Christian perspective. So how much different would it be, or how would you justify Christianity being more true than to Islam, for instance?
Islam, to put it succinctly, Islam is logically contradictory.
How so? How so?
Okay. Islam in the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures. Right? You got that?
What do you mean?
Islam affirms the Christian scriptures. Okay. The
Affirms.
Quran. Let me just say that. The Quran affirms the Christian scriptures. Okay. I shouldn't have said Islam. I should say the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures. Nowhere does the Quran disconfirm the Christian scriptures. The Christian scriptures are regarded within the Quran as revelations of Allah.
Yeah.
The Christian scriptures contradict the Quran. Now, at this point, the person of an Islamic persuasion will say the Christian scriptures were utterly or entirely corrupted. Now,
yeah, and Islam is the correction. Yeah.
right. And if I say to them, where does the Quran say that?
No, that's the reason why it came after Christianity.
No. It doesn't matter that they claim that that's the reason. When I ask a hypothetical Muslim, and the answer, the responses I'm giving you are bits and pieces, composites from different Muslims that I've debated. Right? If I ask, where does the Quran say that the Christian scriptures were corrupted? They're not going to be able to go to any surah and quote a verse where it says that. That is a conclusion that a Muslim has adopted to avoid falsification of Muhammad and the Quran.
But do you know that Islam it applies it applies linearity in that it mentions in several verses that the prophet who came before Jesus. Do you know that?
Real quick though, if I can interject.
Sure.
Just so you know though, Emperor, I believe Islam gets the Trinity wrong. They correct me if I'm wrong. They believe that Mary is part of the Trinity.
So I'm just giving a general. I'm just giving a general.
Wait, was that true, Darth? That they believe that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't gone to that, but just real briefly, they're in the surah. I'm trying to remember what the number of it is. I have it on my files here. In several surahs, the Quran specifically refers to the concept of the Trinity. It essentially identifies the Trinity in the Quran as that Allah is a God, Jesus is a God, and Mary is a God.
So why could it not be that the Trinity might be the wrong?
Okay, because you see, first of all, the Quran is maintained by Muslims to be the infallible, omniscient revelation of Allah. The Quran got the content of the doctrine of the Trinity completely wrong.
But maybe your doctrine of the Trinity, right, is the wrong one, and they
got
it completely right.
Okay, all right. Let him speak. Wait a minute. Let him speak. Go ahead.
It's really simple, right? Like your doctrine comes from the books which you consider to be correct. So why couldn't this one be the correct one if you consider these books to be correct?
Listen, just hold that thought. I'll be back in about three or 4 minutes. I'll be right back. And boy, thank you for bringing in that point. I'll try to address it when I get back on mic. Okay.
Anytime.
I actually have a Muslim that's debated with Darth on that topic, and I'm fairly sure that his answer would be that they believe that Allah is God, so there's only one God, and it's Allah, and also that the Christian scriptures were inspired by God but corrupted by man or mistranslated, that kind of thing, and so the more recent revelation is valid over the
would be the
previous revelation.
I actually have a few questions for Darth Dawkins when he gets back. I don't know if any of you are interested in hearing his answers, but they pertain to prayer, whether or not he converses with the Almighty himself, and what he thinks Jesus Christ was doing during his missing 18 years.
Just chilling around, being a bro.
Okay.
I mean, as far
Yeah.
as reviewing a resume when looking to, you know, employ a higher power, 18-year gap is kind of a big deal.
So my Muslim friend just messaged me and he said that the Quran, this Quranic scripture is direct revelation from God, and they see the Bible, the biblical direct revelation. So they hold the direct revelation over the indirect revelation in terms of authority and validity.
Damn. Well, this all sounds like a bunch of very well thought out ideas about worshiping books by dead people.
Oh man, you're the best, whoever that was.
But at the end of the day, Christians will also they will claim that their belief is wrong, no matter how it was directly or indirectly sent through people.
Well,
Yeah.
whether
Wait,
anybody
what?
likes
What?
it, Christianity
Can you repeat
founded equality under God. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
who said that? What
you're
Christians?
welcome.
What?
God, yeah, but the difference between you're saying Allah and God are the same thing, but they preach different things. Because if you read in the Quran, I don't give a crap what
But-
any Muslim is saying. I can take the direct scriptures. I can literally find
Oh.
in 5 minutes if anyone
Yeah.
wants it. It's a lot
The-
more violent
The thinking is that
and vengeance seeking.
it's possible that they're both describing the same thing, but they just have different interpretations of the thing, how they view
No,
the
no
thing.
Christian will tell you that.
Well,
Absolutely not.
I'm telling you that. I mean,
Christians will not.
you could have a concept of me that's actually comes down to it's incorrect, and I could have a concept of me that's closer to being correct, but it's not like your view of me. It's not like you're not attempting to describe me, and I'm not attempting to describe me just because it's not perfectly correct.
No, what I'm saying is Christians don't believe that Allah and God are the same. Christians don't believe that Allah is a misunderstanding of God.
Well, they
Yeah,
don't.
they're
far
not
as I
the
know.
same.
They
They're
don't
not the
believe
same
that,
God.
but the thing that I'm saying is that it's possible that they're both describing the same thing, and they both just have different conceptions of the thing that they're
False.
describing.
No.
Yeah.
Not even listening.
Nope,
I would
not
disagree
at all.
You didn't? Could you repeat what I said so I made sure that you're understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
I
if-
do understand what you said. You think that
Bacon?
they're saying
Oh,
there's
sorry.
maybe misconception that both Allah and God are the same.
I mean,
concept.
this is a translation from the Noble Quran. This is chapter 2, verse 191 to 193. And kill them wherever you find them, and turn them out from where they have turned you out.
Yeah, we know Islam is violent. This is a problem.
Dude, you can quote a dozen verses from the Old Testament that are just as violent. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
proving.
both are
No,
bad.
but none of them,
One-
none of
one
them,
quoting
none of them preach revenge of people. It's more of the vengeance of the God. It's two different things.
That's
Oh,
not
one-
You can find,
one-
you
In the
can
Old
find
Testament,
violence.
in the Old Testament, God
Respect,
literally
respect.
stops the sun from the earth from
Dude.
revolving around the sun, so that the Jews can go kill like 5 other tribes.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah, I know.
I don't know
Jesus
what you're
Christ.
talking about. Yeah, this guy. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but those were righteous
You don't know your Bible.
killings. You have
Yeah,
to
and so would
understand there's a
That's
difference.
seen as righteous. and so
matter.
would the verses of the Quran, they would be seen as God or Allah, giving righteous, credence for those people to do what they did. I don't. They're the same. It's the same thing.
I mean,
But
yeah.
God is able to intervene. He's able to make them like if he wants people to worship him, why doesn't he make everyone worship him? Why do you have
Well,
to have
that's a
choice?
why. That's moving the goalpost, I believe, rather than is this true? It's a why.
No, because God is violent. Maybe he can intervene. Why does he need people
you're
to
asking
kill in
a
his
why.
name? Why does he need people to kill in his name?
You're asking a why,
narcissistic,
which
maybe.
is not the same as your original
Be-
question.
He's maybe
Because he doesn't
narcissistic.
directly interfere with his creation.
You most
or-
certainly
He can't do that.
Bacon, he definitely does.
I
course he
didn't
can't do
say
that.
he can't. Of course he can.
Yeah, so
No,
why
he
doesn't he do
does.
that?
I'm not saying
Why
he
doesn't he
can't.
do
I'm saying
that?
he does.
Why doesn't he
It
do
would
that?
be interfering.
Yeah, so what? So
Exactly,
what?
he does.
So what?
You keep asking why.
If he
You can't
interfered,
ask
so
why.
he'd be
So
interfering.
what? Well, look. So what? Then you
Yeah,
don't know the
exactly.
whole point of Christianity. about
so
free
what?
will.
Why does it
Oh,
matter
what's
if
up,
he-
Danny?
Why doesn't matter? Then
Yeah,
what's
how does it
all?
matter? How does this whole test matter? Doesn't matter to
Okay,
God anyway.
Emperor,
Darth
you're
is back.
asking is
Guys,
you're
Darth is
asking
back.
us questions that you are supposed to ask God when you meet him or something.
Who?
Yeah, Darth is back, by the way. So
I'm back.
Oh my gosh, Ocean.
Hey, Darth, I have a
Yo,
couple
what's up,
questions for you.
man? Take me by the land.
This whole test is pointless, man. Doesn't
How
serve
do
any
you know?
purpose. It
How
only
do you
serves
know?
purpose one,
Okay, I
only
don't-
one purpose, and that's God to gain more. He's narcissistic. He wants self-esteem.
Okay,
He
I
wants
don't want
people to worship
to.
him.
Really?
Well, as the
Yet
as
he's
the
self-sufficient. He should be able to
as
create
the
it for
purpose
himself.
being that he is, he kind of deserves everything that he is given. And
Deserves and deserves. Why does he feel the deserve?
I don't
Why
want
is different than
Is
asking?
he self-narcissistic? Is he narcissistic?
I don't want to
You
interrupt.
wanna move down real quick? I have
Can you
a couple of
can you
questions.
stop being this active, Emperor?
Okay, I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to
I'm not
interrupt.
interrupting. I'm giving my arguments.
Gentlemen, I'm speaking. Okay, I do
Okay,
not want
wow.
to interrupt if a thread is occurring at the moment. If I'm not interrupting a thread that people want to continue on, I wanted to respond to communism as long as I'm not stepping on any current thread.
No, you're not. Go ahead.
Okay, so communist boy, could you repeat your question before I had to step out?
Sure. Broadly, the question is, why does the doctrine of the Trinity have to be the doctrine of the Trinity as it's seen in Christianity, rather than that which you present as being in Islam, which I don't believe is the correct interpretation. But even if it is, right? Like, why is your interpretation necessarily correct?
Yeah.
Well, I'm speaking from my ultimate commitment. The ultimate commitment is that the triune God of creation has revealed that he is triune. Okay?
How can you prove your commitment to be
But-
right?
So,
Okay.
but from the Muslim perspective, right?
No, but how can he prove his
now,
commitment to be
listen,
right?
Slow down, okay? When we talk about proving or verifying something, this concept is not the same as persuasion, okay? And let me just briefly touch on that, right? I could hypothetically, let's say, prove something to people in here about something, but to somebody who would have an otherwise bias, they may disregard the lines of proof and still remain unpersuaded. I'm sure that we all know of similar instances. So verification and proof in a colloquial sense is not the same thing as persuasion, because there are times when people can be persuaded that something is the case. But with that persuasion,
like Christianity.
where that, okay, please don't make snide comments, okay?
Good.
No, may I just ask Darth Dawkins? You still? I'm just jumping back to the question of what Communist Boy said. He said,
I'd like to
"How
finish.
do you
Okay.
prove that Christianity is valid?"
There are times where we may persuade someone that actually falls short of what we might consider to be a proof or verification. So proof that something is the case is not the same thing as persuasion. Now,
Okay.
when it comes to verification that something is the case, right, we're going to have a terminal or a stopping point or origin point for that line of reasoning and proof. That terminal point is our ultimate authority, okay? So when one asks, how do you verify, not how can you persuade me to accept, but how do you verify that which is the ultimate authority?
And how do you do that?
That question is a logically incoherent one, because
Yeah, so we will be unconvinced, maybe. Half the population.
Listen, please, okay? To request verification of that which is the ultimate authority is logically incoherent, because there cannot be an external authority that verifies the ultimate authority.
Why doesn't he want to do it? Why doesn't God want to come down and show us through his own image? Then maybe everyone will become convinced.
That's an entirely different question. Now, communist boy, okay? When I'm speaking to you, I'm verbalizing what is the bottom basic ultimate authority of Christian theism, okay? Now, so when I say to you that Islam is false or contradictory, is because it is inconsistent and contradictory to that which I hold to is the ultimate authority. Now, likewise, whatever you consider to be false, the reason why you consider it to be false is because it conflicts to what are your ultimate commitments, about the nature of reality. Now, the dispute will now be as to what is or which is the ultimate authority, Communist Boy.
I guess that's correct, but that doesn't. So my problem is, right, you presented this as an internal error to Islam, right? Like that.
It is.
But so the problem is that, again, they would disagree on what the ultimate authority is. They would make a different ultimate.
Right, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go walk through this, okay? And you can stop me at any time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Quran and Islam maintains the Quran is the infallible, inspired word of Allah, right? Got that?
That it does.
Okay. The Quran affirms the Christian scriptures as revelation of Allah.
Yeah, but not as infallible ones.
Okay. Well, here's the problem then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because is that your opinion, or is that something that you have derived from some Islamic source?
Is that my opinion or something? I mean, I'd say it's both. I don't know quite how to say that.
Okay, now let me ask you this question. The Christian scriptures, are they as codified Allah's revelation?
That's so what they would
What
say,
does it mean?
right? Is that like
here's the issue. The issue isn't so much what do Muslims say. The issue is, what is the position of the Quran? Okay. Now, the Muslims must adopt what the Quran affirms, lest they contradict themselves. Now, does the Quran affirm that the Christian scriptures are the revelation of Allah?
I'm not sure. It's been a while since I read it.
Well, if you're not sure, then why are you commenting on all these things?
I mean, like, I don't have a verse on hand, but I'm almost certain
Well,
that it merely states that these
on the
were
one
prior
hand,
prophets.
on the one hand, you're making certain statements concerning Islam vis-a-vis Christianity, but then when I question you, you're backpedaling that you don't know.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I don't have like a verse on hand or a scholar to point you to. However, my recollections suggest that this is not the correct way to interpret my interactions with Muslims.
You're incorrect. The Quran affirms in multiple surahs, it affirms the Christian scriptures. What the Quran does, okay, please don't overtalk me. I don't mind you objecting. I do mind argumentativeness. Now, the Quran criticizes the oral representation of some Christians, and it directs them to return to the Christian scriptures. You will not find one verse that says that the Christian scriptures as codified were corrupted. You understand that?
Sure, let's take that as true.
Now, we have the codified Christian scriptures. In fact, the Christian scriptures that we have from 900 AD, 800 AD, 700 AD, 600, 500, 400, 300 AD, excluding a discussion on textual copyist errors and variants, are for all intents and purposes identical with respect to the central doctrines that are presented in the Gospels as well as the remaining New Testament books. So the claim that the Christian scriptures were corrupted is going to have to be time indexed. Do you understand that?
Well, that's not necessarily true. Like what they
I
could say.
asked you a question. You didn't understand the question.
Yeah, but I'm saying that the premise isn't right.
Okay, you're not
right?
getting
So
this, dude. Dude,
so-
listen. Let me.
Let him answer the question, Darth.
Okay,
Let him answer the question.
Listen. Do you understand that the claim that the Christian scriptures were corrupted must be time indexed? Now, you said that's.
I'm saying it's not.
true. Okay.
It doesn't need to be time indexed.
Okay.
Why does it have to be that?
Then you don't know. Okay, listen. You've already admitted that you don't know some of these things that you're talking about. Now, do you understand?
I've admitted I don't have them on hand.
Okay,
That's not-
listen.
Why does it have to be time?
My
indexed?
patience grows weak when people are being argumentative rather than substantively disagreeing. Now, if
We are substantial. We are substance. We are disagreeing with substance.
Okay, please stop. Okay, so communist boy,
Mhm.
if the claim that the Christian scriptures are corrupted cannot be disconnected with what is called a time index. If you disregard that, that simply tells me you simply do not understand the issue at hand. Because if they say the Christian scriptures were corrupted, they had to be corrupted in time.
That's not necessarily true. That's what I
Okay,
wanted to
you
get at,
don't-
right?
Okay, dude, listen to me.
Darth, why can't he answer? Why can't don't you let him answer the question?
Listen.
No, Darth, come on, let him answer the
Hey,
question.
Darth Dawkins, can
Okay,
you check
now,
your
Don't,
DMs?
don't
Communist
be
boy.
annoyed.
Okay, please
Don't be-
don't interrupt. Listen, I don't want to have to pull rank here. Okay, so communist boy. Okay,
Mhm.
if the Muslim says, well, the Christian scriptures were corrupted in 900 AD. Okay, the Christian scriptures would either have to be themselves in their inception faulty, or the Christian scriptures would have been corrupted after they were codified. Do you understand that before I move on?
No. So when they say the word
You don't,
corruption, right,
seriously, you don't understand that.
Let him finish,
when they
Darth.
say
You
the
keep
word corruption,
interrupting.
they could many things, right? Like they could mean that it was corrupted by time, that it was translation, that it's inherent transmission from
You're
God
not-
to previous
okay,
prophets. It
you're
was
not-
corrupted.
okay, I've had this problem with you before, okay? You don't understand a number of issues, and then you're argumentative with me. Now, either the Christian scriptures as originally put into print were free from corruption, or they were not originally free from corruption. Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's
And they
the
could say that
principle
they were
of
not
the law.
originally free.
Okay, now, since a Muslim cannot claim that due to contradicting the Quran that the Christian scriptures were corrupted the moment they were penned.
They can claim that.
No, okay, dude, you know.
Then where are the surahs,
what-
right?
what-
Like, I
listen
just
to
wanna know
me.
this.
Listen to me. Listen.
Why?
Okay.
God damn it,
Why?
Darth Dawkins. I've been trying to ask you a question for about 20 minutes now. I've been really respectful and listening. Will you please check your DMs? And I'm serious. I've got my scripture open right now. I actually want to have a fucking discussion with you.
All right, hold on a second.
Arrive
How do
to
you
a
not get this
conclusion,
actual
please.
communist boy?
I love how communist wasn't even given the opportunity to answer the question.
Yeah.
Who needs it?
Oh, this
Guest
is going to be boring.
speakers.
How do you not get this, communist boy? That if the scriptures were, oh shit! Wait, I'll be right back.
Yikes. So my problem, like, so theoretically, I don't know what the like actual Muslim position is. I just have a problem with this idea that it's either correct as given, or it was like corrupted through time.
Okay, so communist.
Mm-hmm.
The Quran affirms the Christian scriptures as codified. Okay?
I don't believe it does.
Okay, listen. Okay, you're speaking out of ignorance. I have actually gone through the many multiples of surahs that affirm the Christian scriptures. Okay? Now,
Mhm.
there is not a single verse in any of the surahs that specify that the Christian scriptures as codified. The reason why I say codified means in writing. There's not one surah that can be appealed to that the original codified revelation of Allah was corrupted. Okay? So, since the Quran...
Darth, haven't we had this issue before?
If you interrupt me again, I will mute you. Now, in order to maintain that the Christian scriptures were corrupted, it will have to be after the original codification. Okay? Now,
Hallo?
when
Waar ben jij dat?
when they're going to have to give a time
Oh, toch al. Ik riep al eerder, maar ik hoorde niemand.
Hey Darth, did you check your DMs yet?
Who's speaking to me?
This is Cornflakes. I sent you some questions.
Please don't interrupt Mr. Dawkins.
So, Darth, my problem with this seems to be that simply because something is not mentioned in the Quran doesn't mean that it is stated, right?
Okay.
This is how Christians often handle biblical contradictions.
Okay, communist. So the Quran affirms the codification, the revelatory codification of the Christian scriptures. We find nowhere in the Quran that the Christian scriptures were corrupted. The claim that the Christian scriptures were corrupted is an extra Quranic assertion. Now, in order for that charge to be made, it must be time indexed relative to after the original codification of the Christian scriptures. So that time index is either going to have to be after the advent of the Quran or before the Quran. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if they say the Christian scriptures were corrupted after, what they mean is they mean all of the Christian scriptures were entirely corrupted. That's an important concept that you need to maintain. Okay. A Muslim may not articulate that well. They may not be consciously aware of that. But what's important is the fact that we have over 5,000 copies of the New Testament within the first millennium.
That's not a fair statement, right?
Far,
We have
far greater.
partial copies.
Okay, listen. We have more than 5,000 copies of manuscripts and including manuscripts, not even including all of the New Testament citations from all of the church fathers. Are you aware of the fact that we can almost entirely reconstruct the New Testament through citations of the early church fathers, which is another issue? But
I mean, I'd love to see scholarly literature on this, right?
Well, I'll
This
be
would a
glad to
good
discuss it with
dictionary,
you.
right?
Now,
I mean, you could just give it, right? If it exists out there.
Listen,
if someone's done this
my
analysis.
My patience is growing very thin with you. Okay. Now, to claim that the Christian scriptures were entirely corrupted as codified, as opposed to an oral representation. Okay. Then to what scriptures was the Quran affirming in approximately 630 AD? If the Christian scriptures were obliterated in the sense that they were entirely corrupted, to what scriptures was the Quran affirming that the Christians returned to?
I have a Muslim friend, if you'd like
Yeah.
to hear the other side of this argument. He said
Okay,
he's interested in speaking with you.
A communist boy.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is the claim that the Christian scriptures were corrupted. They're going to have to give a time index, whether it was before or after the advent of the Quran. If they say it was after the advent of the Quran, we have a problem because we have copies of the New Testament and the Gospels predating by several hundred years before the advent of doctrinal positions within the Gospels and the New Testament books that contradict the Quran. So the Muslim, in order to avoid falsification, is going to have to say that they were entirely corrupted before the advent of the Quran. Okay?
So what's your
Now,
claim?
if they maintain that the Christian scriptures were corrupted, that's going to have to mean they were all corrupted in terms of their pristine, original, infallible state, because Allah's revelation is deemed to be infallible. If a Muslim wants to say Allah's revelation isn't always infallible, they cut their own throat. So now, hold on a second.
My friend is
Okay,
Muslim.
that's fine. Okay, so now, when the Quran in the early part of the 7th century affirms the Christian scriptures, there were no Christian scriptures to affirm because they were obliterated in terms of corruption. Do you understand, communist boy?
So I mean, I think you always overstate these claims. Like the copies, the 5,000 or whatever copies you refer to, are in many ways partial copies and scraps. Like
we're not discussing that right now. Okay.
Moreover, the implication that what was currently being taught.
Do you understand? Now, if you ignore the point that I'm questioning you on, I will move on to speaking with somebody else.
I mean, perhaps you should. Because you could move on to speaking with a Muslim who has a more textual.
Can I speak
Darth
to you?
Dawkins. I'm still waiting, Darth. If you're, have you checked your DMs? I'm still waiting on that.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, give Cornflakes a chance. He's been patient.
Hold on, guys. What are we talking about real quick so I can get caught
Yeah,
up?
listen,
how about you sit the fuck back
there's a plethora of interruptions, and I'm going to start muting people without warning.
Darth, the problem is that you ask a question, right? You have like a 30-second lead up, you ask a question,
so
and then when
now-
that question doesn't go on the route you want it to, you shut that person down. Like you
Listen,
overtalk, you interrupt.
Communist boy, if you persist in your demeanor, I will server meet you.
I mean, that's fine.
Darth Dawkins, this is Cornflakes here. May I ask you a couple questions?
Now that communist boy is gone with his argumentativeness, yeah, go ahead.
All right. In the DM I sent you, let me pull it up. I asked you a couple questions. Let's start with, are you familiar with the story in Samuel 1:15 about the destruction of the Amalekites?
What about it?
I was just curious as to what you think God's reasoning was for being upset with Saul for not completely killing every last man, woman, child, ox, sheep, stuff like that.
He was given a command that all the remaining life forms in that location were to be terminated.
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpreted it as well. He's disobeying the Father.
Well, it's not a matter of interpretation. It's crystal clear.
I'm still at an interpretation phase.
Samuel stated to Saul, "What is this bleating of sheep that I hear?"
Yeah,
and he said, to obey is better than sacrifice.
I agree. I just read the text.
And then he said, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Do you know what that means?
Correct. No, I understand. Moses was also told, let no sorcerer live.
No. When Samuel stated to Saul, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, do you know what is meant by that?
Rebellion against the Father?
Rebellion against God's command to Saul to wipe out every living thing within a specific location. Now, Samuel rebuked him and says to obey is better than sacrifice because Saul gave the empty excuse that he was going to sacrifice these animals.
Yeah.
Now, his so-called claim of sacrifice and duty to God was actually an act of disobedience. To obey is better than sacrifice. He was reprimanding, he was actually ridiculing Saul. He then said, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. I'll ask you for the third time. Do you have any idea what that means?
No.
Okay. Witchcraft is to put yourself in a position or a realm where you are open to contact and influence of the demonic spirit realm. Okay? Rebellion against God's commands takes you out from God's spiritual protection into the to greater influence of the demonic realm. Okay?
Understood.
Okay? And we can clearly see this as typified not only throughout the Old Testament, but in the Garden of Eden is a very clear example.
World's gonna die.
Can I ask you another question?
Is anyone in the church work there?
What do you think Jesus Christ did during his missing 18 years?
Oh my God.
What
missing 18 years?
The Bible is kind of spotty on information between. 13.
Are you? Did you think that the Gospels were some type of biopic?
No, I'm just curious as to what you think he was doing.
Then you do know that there are different genres of biographies in the ancient world, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they don't follow the same pattern as certain biopics, so there's nothing missing there.
Okay, I didn't mean to trigger anything with the words missing.
I'm just responding to you. I'm saying people make a mistake when they think of the Gospels as a specific genre of biography or biopic.
So
I always pronounced it biopic, but whatever.
Is that it? Am I pronouncing it incorrectly?
I think it's biopic.
All right. I mean, if I am, I'm willing to be corrected. I've always heard others pronounce it biopic.
Yeah, it's definitely biopic. I just realized I've been pronouncing it wrong my entire life.
Well, maybe
Hey,
these
listen,
will be more.
I've botched the pronunciation of words on a number of occasions. I don't care.
Maybe this will be a more productive line of questioning here. The other two questions I asked you in your DM were, how do you pray, and do you actually converse with the Almighty?
Do I converse? Yes, I do. However, I don't hear audibly from God.
How do you interpret the word of the Lord? How do you know that you're getting the right signal? I don't. What word would you use? Help me ask you
God
this
has
question.
always communicated to mankind in the ordinary, everyday language. So that's like asking, how do you interpret Donald Trump? How do you interpret how I'm talking to you now? We use normal, basic principles of interpretation, otherwise known as hermeneutics, and we apply it to the situation.
Well, can you kind of describe to me the last time you got a message from God? What were the signals? What were the signs?
Yeah, it's when I got my first Bible. That was the first codified message that I got from God. But that doesn't include God innately convicting me and making me know that He exists, which He does for all people, all men.
And
I'm not a don't confuse me with charismatics who think that they're receiving additional special revelation. I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm just want to hear your ideas. How do you pray? What does that entail?
Praying entails speaking to God, either out loud or in the quietness of your own mind.
And what are the types of things that you think, as a good follower of the Lord, what should we be saying to God? What should we be?
We should be thanking God, praising God.
Why does God want to be praised?
Asking God to make us more godly on a daily basis. Being
Why does God want to be praised?
Praying for loved ones and non-loved ones around them, for those who are outside of salvation will be brought to salvation. Things like that.
Why does He want to be praised?
Because he tells us that he should be praised. He's worthy.
Is he narcissistic?
What's narcissism?
You don't know?
Well, tell me what is narcissism and how is God narcissistic?
It's the nature of always demanding gratitude from other people.
So we're not we shouldn't be grateful to God.
No, I'm saying, why does God wants to be praised? I'm saying, why does God want to be praised? He's
Because
self-sufficient. He should be able to grant this sufficiency himself. Why does he require us humans to praise him?
God's aseity is not mitigated by his telling us that he is worthy of praise and that we're obligated to praise him.
Obviously, we are obligated to go to heaven.
Well, my argument for that would be that narcissism is a personality disorder and God is not a person.
So it's a God disorder, maybe.
I don't think so. I think as a creator, you are allowed to demand certain things and you are allowed to set certain rules, you know.
But I don't think a self-sufficient God would even require praise in the first place. Do you know what self-sufficient means?
If I walked into your room right now and I kicked off my shoes and I put my stinky ass feet up on your table and I started eating your food, I think you'd be pretty pissed off, and I think you'd be well within your rights to tell me to.
What does this have to do with God's nature? What does this have to do with God's nature?
Because you're in God's world.
Yeah, I'm talking about God's nature. Why does he want to be praised if he's self-sufficient?
I think you should. I think if God created a world that you can live in and have a happy existence, you should praise. And I think that
you need to praise him to go to heaven. Yeah, it's not that. It's not so optimistic.
Do you want to go? Do you want to go through your entire life and never receive praise when it is due?
What?
I said, do you want to go through your life and never receive praise when it is due? Like if you're doing good work.
I'm human. I'm not self-sufficient. Jesus.
Here's the thing, though. God doesn't rely. He doesn't rely on prayers for his existence.
No,
like
but
when
it's
you
for
say,
our own good, and therefore God grants you goodness in return.
Here's the thing, right? If you look at it from a perspective of belief in God, right?
Yeah.
God doesn't require you to pray to him, right?
No.
You require the prayer more than he does, because if you don't pray to God, God doesn't lose anything, but humans lose something.
Why
and
does
that's
this
just the
reality
will
exist?
God. What do you mean?
Why does that reality exist, that in order to be granted goodness, you must pray to God?
Well, if someone asks you for something, right? If someone asks you to obey them or follow a command, and by following that command, you will achieve a reward. Don't you think that it makes sense that you should have to do that?
I mean, in the first place, why does God even care? Before he created the heavens, the hell, the universe, why did he come to the conclusion or the idea that he wants to create humans to be, so we could praise him, and then for those who obey him will be granted heaven, and those who don't will go to hell? Why?
You have to look at it as you have to look at the mythos of like the creation story. So like take Adam and Eve, for example. After he created Adam, he would walk with Adam in the garden.
I'll be back, guys. I got to step away for 10 minutes. I'll be back.
All right. If you look at Adam speaking with God in the garden, and you look at that as being close to order, close to obedience, close to discipline, and receiving the rewards from being truthful, and having a truthful relationship with the Father.
Why does God need relationships? He's self-sufficient.
Why would an omniscient being create humans? That's actually a really old question. And the answer, yes, I can. I can answer it. It's been answered. It's the answer to what an all-knowing, all-seeing being is without is limitation.
What?
Here's the thing. My view.
The answer to what an omniscient being is without is limitation. And so that is why God created humans. Well, when you can create everything and you know everything, the one thing you don't have is limitation. So you create something with limitation. You've created humans.
Why is that?
Because you have everything already. The only thing you didn't have was limitation.
So did God become bored? Bored, maybe. He became bored.
No, not necessarily.
He became bored because he already knows everything.
What do they say about boredom? I don't go inside the devil's
Emperor
became bored.
Hey, Emperor, are you familiar with the theological term aseity?
No.
Okay.
Welcome back, Darth. That was a quick 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, it was quicker than I thought. Aseity means God is not dependent upon anything. God is okay. Now it means God is ase. It means that he is in a class of no other. It means he doesn't depend on anything else, nor does God have any needs. So you have a faulty understanding of the nature of God. Okay, God's commands are not do not emanate because he has needs. God has no needs.
Yeah, but obviously God, yeah, I understand this, but obviously God has a scale where he values goodness or over evil, right? So that means God himself values things, and therefore also, if you give praise to God, he values this as good, therefore you'll be granted paradise or heaven, and then if you don't praise him, you'll go to hell. So
You skipped a couple steps there.
You're not referring to the God of the Bible. You're referring to some other God. Okay.
No, not really.
Okay. Emperor, I may sound. Okay, listen. We're talking about the triune God of the Bible.
What?
No,
triumph God.
There may be people in here who don't hold to that, but we have been talking about the triune God of Scripture. Okay.
What's triune God?
Triune. It is the God of the Old and New Testament. Okay, the God.
So the Christian Bible, Christian God.
There is a singular being, namely God, who has plurality within his unity. That plurality is multi-personal within a unified single being.
Yeah,
now, there are people who disagree with that. They're called Unitarians. Contemporary Judaism, Islam, Jehovah's Witnesses would hold, or for example, Unitarian Universalists would all hold to the doctrinal concept that God is a monad. In other words, that he doesn't have a plurality within the unity of his singular being. Okay? Now, when it comes to the aseity of God, right? I'm only going to be able to speak for the triune God, who is multi-personal in his singular being. I consider any other talk of any other God to be simply imagination, that no other God exists.
But does God have emotions? Because you're talking about personality.
God speaks of himself in an analogical way as though he had emotions.
Yeah.
But God's mental states are not they're not like ours. Okay, so God will express what he is like through human terms that are analogies of things that we know, so that we can attempt to understand him better.
Why couldn't God create us to have greater understanding?
Well, okay, here.
I want the answer to that. I want the answer to that.
Hold on a second. God could have created us with varying degrees of capacity to understanding. Why he gave the level of understanding that he did versus a higher one is not really an important point, nor is it an interesting point.
It is interesting because it means that maybe he has limits. Maybe he has limited power.
No, okay. Again, you make error after error in some of your questions. Okay.
Not really.
The fact that God gave us a specific level of understanding does not mean that he is limited with that respect.
No, but I want to know why his intentions, why he gave us the amount of
knowing and wanting to know why. The fact that you don't know why a design is that way does not indicate that the design is there due to the limitations of the designer.
No, I don't believe that either. But I still want to know why he gave us.
Unfortunately, the way you expressed yourself a minute ago, that is directly what you said.
Oh.
Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong in just saying, "Oh, I misspoke," or "I guess I was incorrect about that." I'm not here to bash you, but I will correct you if I think you have a misconception of the properties of the God of the Bible.
What do you
I'm not here to put you down, attack you. Okay, but I
No.
will tell you where I think you're incorrect.
Where? So where?
Yeah, what happened to the Muslim guy that was here?
Oh yeah, I'm right here. I was just y'all were talking, so I was just waiting until everybody finished.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So why do you hold the Bible to be more historically authentic than the Quran? And also, I want you to repeat your view that the Quran, or whatever argument you're making, because I didn't hear all of it. That the Quran.
I
is,
made
more-
no comment about the historical accuracy vis-a-vis the Quran versus the Bible.
Okay.
I said that the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures.
Mhm.
The Christian scriptures contradict the Quran.
Okay, so I was going to tell you the Quran. If you actually read the Quran, right, it speaks of the old books and stuff, right, and it says that they have been corrupted. When you read the Hadith, there's an authentic.
Okay, would you please? Okay, I have heard this assertion many times before. Can you please cite for me which surah and which verse?
Yes, I'll find it.
Specifically, let me finish, please.
Okay.
I have had Muslims make the same assertions. When they pony up specific verses in the surahs, never once have those verses said that the codified Christian scriptures were corrupted. Now, maybe you could be the first person who can show me a verse in the Quran where it identifies that the Christian scriptures as codified were corrupted. Which surah is that?
All right. So in chapter 4, verse number 46, it says, "Among the Jews are those who distort words from their proper usage and say, 'We hear and disobey, hear but not heard.'" And
can you give me about 20 seconds? I'm going to pull. What is it? Surah
4:46, chapter 4, verse 46.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Quran.com. It's the first link that came up.
Okay, sure.
It's still. Just so we're on the same page, and I'm not trying to steal your spotlight, but just let me just read it back to it so that we're in agreement with the wording here, okay? Among the Jews are those who distort words from their proper usages, okay? We hear and disobey, and hear but not heard. And Reina, I don't know what that is, twisting their tongues and defaming the religion. And if they had said, "We hear and obey and wait for us to understand," it would have been better for them and more suitable. But Allah has cursed them for their disbelief, so they believe not except for a few. Where does it say that the Christian scriptures were corrupted in this passage?
Well, here's the thing, right? The Jews follow the Old Testament, and which is part of the Christian scriptures. This is the first part of it, right? I can also get into the other.
Okay. Now wait a minute. Where does it say the codified scriptures, the codification was corrupted? I understand that the Quran criticizes the oral representation and what we might call practice. But where does it say the actual codification was corrupted?
When it says those who distort words from their proper usages.
Okay,
and,
that doesn't that verse right there it's not even a weak case for your position.
Non sequitur.
I mean, if it's saying that you change the words,
listen. It is one thing. I'm sure you're familiar. You sound like you're from the United States, are you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you're familiar with the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's one thing if I say that somebody is orally misrepresenting what the Bible says. It's an entirely different matter if I were to say that the Jehovah's Witnesses corrupt the actual text. In this passage here, we do not have even a weak case that the text itself has been altered. So do you have
well, no, because the word used for distorted does not directly translate.
Listen to me. Listen.
Mhm.
Distort words is not a strong case that the codified text was corrupted. There are people, let me give you an example, okay? Even within Christendom in the United States, I've been a Christian for over 35 years. I have heard ministers quote the Bible word for word. And then as they go along and give a commentary, they distort what the text actually says. But there has been no corruption of the codified text. Now, the issue is this. When the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures, it's referring to the codified Christian scriptures. This passage here does not support your contention that the codified scriptures were altered.
I mean, here's the thing, right? The word that you use for distorted does not always directly translate into just simply the English meaning of what is distorted, right? Because what is it? You have to understand the two languages are different. And when it talks about something being distorted, it means that it has been changed completely.
Do you have another translation other than Quran.com that you'd like me to look at the translation of the Arabic?
Well, no, but here's the thing, right? If it's
Is there any other translation? Is there any other translation of the Quran that does not translate the word distort?
I don't know specifically because I'd have to look at each translation. But here's the thing of the Darth. I want to say something because you've been talking. This is just a single example, right? Which I gave, right? Even if there's more explicitly stated in other places, right? And also in the Hadith, right? I'll read this to you. I'll put it in the chat.
I'm not interested. Listen, I'm not interested in the Hadith. I'm interested in the Quran.
But the Hadith is part of the canonical text of Islam, though.
Does the Quran say that?
Yes, it says to obey the prophet, and it says you can't obey the prophet without reading.
How do I know? Okay, how do I? Was the Hadith the product of Allah's revelation?
To some extent, sure. The Hadith is what the Prophet Muhammad has narrated and said, right?
No. How do you know?
Because
that was infallible. You claim that the Quran is, but how do you know the Hadith is?
Well, here's the thing: not every Hadith is infallible, right? But
okay.
Wait, let me finish. Let me finish my point, Darth.
This is my room, dude.
No.
This is
Darth. I was giving you an explanation. You keep interrupting me. I haven't been able to talk at all. You keep talking over me.
Okay, now, hold on a second. I'm not in the right screen here. Okay. Now, this is my room here. Okay. Okay, you still here? Okay. Now listen.
Yeah.
I asked you for a clear.
I haven't been able to even explain my point.
You're interrupting me again. Okay.
But I was talking and you interrupted me.
I understand that, but I'm not going down your rabbit trail in discussing
no.
right now. This is your last chance. Okay. I'm being polite with you. Okay.
Last chance.
Now, I asked you for a crystal clear example of where the Quran says that the codified Christian scriptures were altered. The verse that you gave me does not support that at all. Now, you're now moving the goalposts in this conversation to switching from the Quran to the Hadith. Now, do you have, okay, here's the question. Do you have any other verses from the Quran that will support your contention that the codified Christian scriptures were altered?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? First off, I want to explain my point without being interrupted because I've been polite to you and I haven't jumped into your discussion when you've been talking. So, I mean, I want to say first off, right? The Hadith, the Quran itself says to, obey the Prophet, right? And it says to, follow what he says. And so the Hadith, the Quran is the infallible word of God, right? But the Hadith is the narrations of what occurred in the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, some Hadiths are not authentic, sure, but other Hadiths are authentic. And the Hadith which I have brought to you is...
And how do you know that?
I'm about to explain that. some hadiths, right? The hadith, for example, I brought to you is in Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 9, book 93, right? Which is one of the most authentic, if not the most authentic book of hadiths, to ever be compiled.
How
And
do
the
you
reason
claim
why,
its authenticity? How do you claim its
Wait, wait.
authenticity?
Yeah.
I'm about to tell you.
Islamic Emperor, please
Wait,
stop
I'm
with
going to
the
explain.
filibusters.
No, I'm not filibustering you. I'm trying to explain this to you because you don't understand it.
Okay.
So here's the thing, right? This hadith, the hadith itself, right? The way it's authenticated is that they look at the specific hadith, right, and the chain of narrators. So they say, which is, so first off, they look at the content of the hadith, which is known as the isnad, which is the text of it, right?
Listen,
If there is any error, wait, let me finish. Let me finish,
No,
Darth. I haven't interrupted you at all.
Listen, I'm going to serve
Darth. Be respectful,
Just finish,
please.
man.
Okay, I'm going to server mute you. Okay, I am not only an admin, this is my room. Okay, now I'm going to let you finish, but if I'm going to interject to make a point of clarification, we're not on equal standing here. Now, I want you to skip with all of the specific Arabic references. You can just use English references. Okay, I don't need a lecture. Get to the point.
All right. All I'm saying, right, is that that the hadiths are what do you call it? They're authenticated based on the narration, who narrated them, right? And so it depends on who this person heard it from, and they hear it from another person. They hear it from another person. Now, Imam Bukhari, he didn't have the, and I'll get back to the point in a second before you interrupt me. I didn't have. Imam Bukhari, he did not have the availability to every single hadith, right? And that's why there were other scholars, right? Famous scholars later on who did have these information and did authenticate this, right? Like, for example, Albani in 1915, I think it was. Sheikh Albani.
You're doing precisely
No.
what I asked.
No,
you.
I'm going to explain to you why this hadith is authentic.
Okay, I will mute you again, and then
No, Darth. I've run off your script.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, it's that simple. Now, I asked him for.
I was interested in hearing what he had to say.
I asked. Okay.
Wait a minute. Who unmuted? Everyone says quickly that he went off, but he asked him a question. He wouldn't answer the question at all.
Okay, now what we have here is called moving the goalposts. Okay, now. I asked him first, point blank, I said, can you give me a crystal clear citation from the Quran that the codified scriptures, not the oral representation, but the codified scriptures were not only altered, but completely obliterated. It means that every copy of the Christian scriptures was changed from what it originally was, okay? Now, the verse in the Quran that he gave us did not support that. It's referring to the oral misrepresentation. Okay? And so when I went to ask him for another verse in the Quran, you'll notice that he didn't pony up on that, and then he wants to give me a lecture about the hadiths. But then he wants to tell me that the hadiths are somehow on equal authority with the Quran. But then it turns out that he says some are authentic and not authentic. And then when I asked him what's the criterion, all I got was more filibustering. Okay, so I'm just not going to put up with that in the room. We're going to move on. The bottom line here is this: the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures, in spite of the fact that the Quran in places states, "Hey, hepatitis." Now you want to do?
Oh, sorry, buddy.
With the click to speak or whatever they call that.
Bad.
Yeah.
Click me sound.
Yeah. So it's fully recognized that there are verses in the surahs that talk about that the Christian, the Jews, or even the Christians are not faithfully representing the Christian scriptures. That's not in question. The question is that the Christian scriptures, as they are extant in terms of them in a totality, that the original content has been obliterated by alteration, namely corruption. So you'll notice that when I ask for a clear verse to show that, what does he appeal to? The same old verses that don't support that at all. Okay? So the bottom line is this: the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures. The Christian scriptures contradict the Quran. In order to avoid this problem, they say that the Christian scriptures were entirely altered, but the copies that we have that predate the origin of the Quran and even postdate the Quran, setting aside the issue of insignificant textual variants, for all intents and purposes contain the identical doctrinal material. So how is it that the Quran could affirm the Christian scriptures when by the time the Quran had been written, they had all been entirely obliterated? So what Christian scriptures could they have returned to and been faithful when they no longer existed? You see, this is the conundrum that they're in. And so the response is to filibuster like Islamic emperor was doing.
Okay, why don't you give him the freedom to just allow him to finish what he has to say?
Because it wasn't relevant. He was moving the goalpost. Do you know what moving the goalpost is?
Why could you not make this more evident?
I'll ask you one more time. You see, you seem to be hard of hearing. Do you know what moving the goalpost is?
Yeah, like you maybe every time.
Oh, okay. What is that? I know you are, but what am I?
What?
Troll.
Yeah.
I'm not trolling.
You're being one right now.
No, I'm just saying, why doesn't he allow the guy to speak to full stop and then he has to say whatever he has to say?
Because he's spewing crap.
Emperor.
And who's to say? Who are you to say?
Emperor. I'm answering you.
Emperor under heaven.
Shut up, or you're going to get server muted. Okay. Now,
I really don't care.
Your question has already been answered. Why I did it?
My question has been answered.
It was already answered. We're going to move on. Okay.
My question.
Yeah, the question you asked, why was he server muted, has already